Okay, now the plan, what we did, we told Terraform to save it in this file. You don't have to, but when you don't do that, Terraform warns you that it may not use, because it did not save, it doesn't guarantee to use what you provided. So as you see, we're going to create a VPC. We have our seeder and we have tags. Now, something about tags. It's generally recommended to use tags. This is a small app, not necessarily have to, but when you get to enterprise level applications or enterprise level systems where you have thousands of resources being used across different organizations or organization units, you want to be able to do proper inventory or proper analysis on your budget, on the usage, etc. And that's necessary so you can charge your projects, your customers properly. And when you do these tags, it helps to run report and filter your reports, and that's where these tags come in place. So it's very highly recommended that you do that. Okay. All right. So let's apply, and we're going to use the plan that was saved, and let's go through. Let's watch that go through, and I'll show you real quick. Earlier we added region. I'm in region US East 1. That's why I had it there. I don't live in Virginia, but the US East 1 is just North Virginia. If you use any of these, the region file, the region variable, you would just set it to whatever is here. Okay. Now we just created a VPC, so let's see. There you go. That's the VPC that was just created. And we don't have a subnet as yet. We don't the default route table. That's it. So now that we have our VPC, we can now do a Terraform destroy, and what that will do, that will use the same plan to go and delete all the resources that were just created. So there you go. It tells what will be destroyed. Type here yes, and it's destroying it. So this is the beauty of using Terraform infrastructure tools versus doing it manually. So let's go back here, let's uncheck that, and let's refresh. And there you go, it's gone. Okay, and that is and so that's the beauty of using that, the IaC. Okay, so now we have the first stage, our VPC created, which is this VPC. Now let's add the subnets, private and public, into the availability zone. Okay. All right, so in our main, we're going to add hold on a second there. Let's add in our VPC main. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna add is our subnet. Let's add our public subnet. Inside the VPC, we're gonna update the main. We're gonna just add the we're gonna add a public an AWS subnet, and we're gonna call it public. So this is, you can change this to whatever you want to name it to, but I just use it as public. This for loop is going to take the variable that we'll set up, and it's going to create n public subnets. Okay, so it's going to loop through, and I'll show you the variable VPC ID from the AWS. I'm going to get the VPC, the ID of the VPC, and then for each of each key I'll assign to the availability zone. The CDAR block, we're going to use it right here. These are functions. Just take a look at the documentation here to understand what this method is. And then as normal, we have our tags. Okay. We have to declare our variables. So public subnet variables, and there you go. So um, there are several um, availability zones within US East 1. I'm just going to use one. So if you use multiple, this for loop will go through each, and that's what this for loop is. So, but I'm using, it's still gonna go through, but I only have one. So you can add any number and you can deploy to any of them, each of them that you supply. Okay, and okay, all right. So we're gonna also, because we're gonna also be adding a private subnet, let's add the variable for that. This is the private and the public, okay, and we're adding that into this availability zone. Okay, so let's go over and add it to the main. Okay, there you go. So now we have both our public and private subnet. Okay, good. All right, let's I think we want to add some output values, because we're gonna need those output values. All right, we're gonna need the private and public subnet information from both. So let's add outputs for these. Okay. All right. So we have our variables, we have our outputs set up. I want to make sure these nodes are visible. And what else do we need? Okay, let's see if we need any variables here. I think we should be fine. Okay, so let's run this and see if, make sure everything is fine. Let's do our init. Okay, no errors. Let's do a plan and see. When you run the plan, it does not change anything in your cloud in the cloud providing environment. Now we're gonna create, we're gonna add. We're gonna add three things, which are, we already have the VPC. There you go. We're gonna add a public subnet, and we're gonna add a private subnet. Okay, and these are the AZ. So that's the plan. Let's apply. There you go. All right, let's check what took place. There you go. We have a VPC, and let's see. There you go. Now we have two subnets. All right, so we have so I'm not gonna make these videos too long, each of these videos long, because I want you to digest all the information. So now we have our VPC, and we have two subnets. We go into subnets and we do a refresh. There you go. I label each of them. There they are. All right, so there are these subnets. There you go. Okay. So there's more work to be done to it. Okay. VPC. Okay. And what we'll do now is before we continue, we will destroy what we just created. Okay, yes. Okay, and that's it for this video. Again, let's do a quick run through. We created our VPC module. We created the main entry point for this whole Terraform infrastructure as a code. Let's do a quick walkthrough. We had our main, okay, some documentation. Drive you to just at your leisure. Please just read over, pause the video, read through. The provider, the region, specify what your region, what's your region. The VPC, we're going to use the VPC module. We're going to pass these variables to the module. They're expected. We define, you have to define your provider. There are other providers, but I would just stick to the simplest if you're relatively new to this. And for the variables, we define the variables that we need. We provide values for each of these. If you don't provide a value here, when you run the plan, it's going to ask you for the value in region. Okay? And the CDR, go back to the video that we talked about that in one of video 1. And then you have your CDR. Follow instructions to go and calculate whatever CDR you have. CDR gets a little bit complicated, so it's outside the scope of this to explain that. That would be an entire video on its own. And then okay, so now once we have those, now it's time to set up our VPC, and we create our VPC here. CDR block, we specify CDR block. We're enabling DNS for support and host name, and this is the VPC, AWS VPC we're creating, and we're calling it VPC. And then we're adding a public subnet and a private subnet. We're applying our configuration and the private subnet. This is bare minimum. Okay, there's a lot more that you would add if you're going to go production. Okay, so don't take this code and then build a production system. That's not a good idea. Okay. Okay, so we define the variables that would be used. If I need to deploy multiple, I just take out each of these, uncomment, and then there are multiple. These are random numbers. You can change these. I just give these numbers. So if it's this, use 1. If it's this, use 4. These are random numbers. Okay, and these, although because they're not there's no default value, the value is expected from the main. If there's none in the main, the value is expected at the command prompt. Okay, so that's it for and we also destroyed the environment, so it's gone. So that's it for the VPC, the subnets, and the VPC and subnets and availability zone. So we just covered this portion. The next video we will get into gateway, which is wrapping up the VPC, and we'll get into NAT gateway, internet gateway, elastic IP, route associate, route public and private and public routes. So we'll focus on gateway in the next video. The following video we'll go and we'll add an EC2 to the VPC, well, the subnet within the VPC, and we'll add security groups to allow traffic in, out, etc. with a private and public environment. So click like and join our channel. There's a lot more to come, and stay tuned. I'll post another video to walk through the gateway. Thank you.